Hello everyone, welcome back. In this Wheel of Time video, we're going to be ranking the 8 Ajahs of the White Tower. That's right, I'm even including the Black Ajah along with the 7 official Ajahs of the White Tower. Before we start, I'll give a little bit of a background as to how I'll be judging the Ajahs on the list. First, I'll be judging them according to their philosophy and their purpose, and how that purpose sets them apart from the sisters of the other Ajahs. Secondly, I'll be assessing them in terms of their usefulness, both within the White Tower and also their usefulness in the broader world of the Wheel of Time. Thirdly, I'll be assessing them in terms of their members. What are the kind of women that join the Ajahs, and how do those Ajahs have an effect on the women that do join them? And finally, I'll be assessing them in terms of how much of a force for good they are as opposed to a force for darkness. It goes without saying that this video will contain spoilers for the entire Wheel of Time series, so if you care about spoilers, please don't watch any further. With all that out of the way, let's begin. Number 8, the Black Ajah. The Black Ajah of Aes Sedai is a secret Ajah comprised of dark friend Aes Sedai who masquerade as sisters of the other Ajahs who have forsaken their 3 oaths in order to serve the Dark One. The Black Ajah reap havoc and destruction wherever they go. Okay, so it should come as no surprise, given the criteria I laid out in the introduction, that the Black Ajah come at the bottom of this list. First of all, their underpinning philosophy is evil. Their aim is to serve the Dark One, which will eventually lead to the destruction of the pattern, which will unravel the fabric of reality as we know it. This basically puts them at the bottom of most of the categories. First of all, serving the Dark One is the ultimate act of evil. Also, members of the Black Ajah tend to be psychopaths and sociopaths. These are women who are willing to kill and torture their sisters, their friends, either to get into the Black Ajah and then also to serve the Black Ajah. It really doesn't get worse than this. Number 7 is the Red Ajah. The Red Ajah is dedicated to seeking out and punishing those who abuse the One Power. Their role is primarily one of seeking out male channelers and bringing them to the White Tower for gentling. They rarely have friends outside their Ajah, and they never take warders. Okay, so first of all, the Red Ajah can be described as one of the more useful Ajahs. In protecting the world from male channelers, they're protecting the world potentially from serious destruction and harm. However, while I think that it might be useful, I also think it's not useful in a morally good way. The Red Ajah are essentially enacting genocide on all male channelers. While yes, they don't necessarily kill them outright, they do gentle them, and this essentially is a death warrant for these men. And these men haven't necessarily done anything wrong either, they are just born with this curse, and therefore they are condemned to a terrible fate. And this is why they don't really sit well with me in terms of their underlying philosophy and how they go about achieving their aims. Also, in terms of membership, the women who join the Red Ajah tend to be pretty terrible people. They tend to be arrogant, they tend to close themselves off from people who don't belong in their Ajah, which suggests a sort of superiority complex and a general dislike of other people. Not to mention the fact that they tend to hate and distrust most men. They're just not really well-rounded good people. At their worst, they remind me of brutal, corrupt coppers. And I don't think it's that much of a surprise either that most sisters who go to the dark side, who join the Black Ajah, come from the Red Ajah. Number 6, possibly a bit of a controversial one. It's not something that I thought would be this low when I did the list, but here we go. The Green Ajah. The Green Ajah are also known as the Battle Ajah, which holds itself ready for the last battle between light and shadow. Greens may bond many warders, and even may choose to marry one. Okay, so let's get into why these are slightly lower on this list than you or I even expected. The problem I have with the Greens is that they're very useful, and they're a force for good in a significant way. I mean, being ready to fight in the last battle is one of the supremest goods you could possibly do, but it's a good that's in a very particular circumstance. The last battle is just one event that happens, and then that's it. They're not really doing much any other time in the way that the other Ajahs are. Other Ajahs are contributing constantly to the betterment of the world that they live in, whereas the Green Ajah are just committed to serving in one particular circumstance at one particular time. Even if we take their role as a more general one, as one of, being an army essentially, we still kind of want to avoid going to war in the first place. It's useful to have an army there, it's useful to have the Battle Ajah there, but if we can have other Ajahs, like the Greys, solve the problems without resorting to conflict, violence and death, then we'd probably rather go there than to the Greens. Also, the good that the Green Ajah serves isn't really unique to that Ajah. Yes, they're probably more competent in battle than the members of the other Ajahs, but at the same time, when the last battle comes, those other Ajahs are involved in the war. So it's not really a unique contribution, and it's only a contribution that occurs in a particular circumstance. And that's why they're all around quite low on this list. One more positive thing to say about them though is that they do seem to be, of all of the Ajahs, the most well-rounded in terms of the character of the people that join them. They seem to be content to be in the real world, they're happy to marry men and have good relationships with men, So that does give them some advantage over the other Ajahs who tend to be quite insular and closed off. Okay, next on the list we have the Brown Ajah. The Brown Ajah are dedicated to knowledge and the collection of ancient wisdom. They generally ignore the mundane world, caring only about history and study, and they are responsible for the White Tower's administration. So the Brown Ajah are somewhat useful, right? They are looking into history and they're learning about the past, and that's very important, especially when you consider that they're looking at ancient artifacts, magical artifacts. They could potentially provide very useful insights. The problem that I have with them though is that they're not really concerned with whether or not the knowledge that they gain has any practical application. They don't really care if discovering how some terangrial works will have, significant benefits for the populace. They just care about how it works. That makes them somewhat less useful than they could be. Also, I worry about the moral principles of the Brown Ajah. People who have knowledge at such a high standard may sometimes be willing to shirk their moral principles or responsibilities in the pursuit of that knowledge. And we might worry about that in terms of how much of a force for good they are. I also worry about the characters who are in the Brown Ajah. These are women who are willing to potentially burn themselves out in the pursuit of knowledge. And that doesn't seem to me to be a healthy way to pursue knowledge. While it might be something that should interest you and it might be something that's important, you shouldn't be potentially, putting yourself in harm's way, or possibly other people, and this is the more important point, other people, putting them in harm's way just to attain knowledge. The Brown Ajah to me sit perfectly in the middle of the list because they're somewhat indifferent to all of the criteria that I've suggested. They can be useful, but they could also be a bit of a hindrance. They could be used as a force for good, but also bad depending on what knowledge they are seeking, and because of their moral principles that they might overlook in attaining knowledge. Okay, next on the list we have maybe another slightly controversial pick, but at number 4 I put the Blue Ajah. The Blue Ajah associate themselves with righteous causes and justice. Their eyes and ears network is the most extensive. Members of the Blue Ajah rarely marry, choosing instead to be wed to their chosen cause. Like the Brown Ajah, I find the Blues to be a bit in the middle when it comes to their usefulness and their morality and their overall philosophy. While the commitment to just causes is a great thing, and it's important to have people going out there and fighting the good fight, Moiraine herself is a member of the Blue Ajah, and her cause generates the most good overall in the story. However, I think the blind commitment to causes can be somewhat of a negative. It can blind sisters of the Blue Ajah to other things that matter. It can even make them do immoral things in order to serve that cause. In a lot of ways, they can be like the Reds, in that the Reds have this particular purpose, stopping men from channeling, and they're willing to go to some terrible lengths to do that. The Blues are also somewhat similar in that regard. It's also not surprising that the Blue Ajah also have a fairly high concentration of black sisters among them. Although I do think the Blues make significant contributions to the good, I think the people who are within the Blue Ajah are well-balanced people, in the sense that they're committing themselves to justice and what's right, which is something that we want and is something that's valuable, both inside the White Tower and in the wider world. What worries me though is how that commitment to justice and a righteous cause can go wrong. You can be corrupted if you're wrong about the cause that you've committed yourself to, and you can also be blinded to moral principles and to other important causes that aren't your cause, so you just ignore them. Number 3 is the White Ajah. The White Ajah is dedicated to the value of logic and reason, devoting itself to questions of philosophy and truth. They cut themselves off from worldly affairs and have no eyes and ears network. Due to this detachment, they rarely bond warders. Okay, so I might be slightly biased in that I am a philosophy PhD student, so I have a lot of respect for logic and philosophy, but I do think that the White Ajah is one of the most important Ajahs overall, and hopefully I'll be able to persuade you of that. All of the other Ajahs have these commitments to, say, knowledge, or to a cause, or to stilling men, or whatever it is. They're committed to a certain thing that can make them somewhat close-minded and attach emotional weight to certain causes that maybe shouldn't be there all the time. Having an Ajah that takes a step back and thinks things through logically and with reason is invaluable to balancing these different interests of these different Ajahs together. One of the reasons why I put the Whites higher than the Blues was because the Blues can be somewhat narrow-minded and committed to their cause, where they're not really willing to see the bigger picture. The good thing about logic and reason is they can help expose when people are being somewhat emotionally attached to a certain cause, and they can help us get back on track and be more objective. Also, in terms of being a force for good and bad, I think it's quite telling that the White Ajah has the lowest concentration of black sisters among them. This suggests that they are the Ajah that is the least persuaded by the darkness, which again demonstrates that they're perhaps less corrupt than most of the other Ajahs. If there is one thing that holds them back though, and why they're not higher, in particular why they come before the number 2 pick on this list, it's because their detachment from the world does somewhat make their usefulness indirect rather than direct. While I do think that that use is important, it's still not going to have the same practical application that the number 1 and the number 2 picks on this list provide us with. Bearing that practical application in mind, let's go to number 2, the Grey Ajah. The Grey Ajah are committed to politics and mediation. They prefer to obtain harmony and consensus above all else, and work as conflict mediators and ambassadors. They are also used to uphold the laws of the land they are in. Politics is what keeps the world running. If two cities are about to go to war, you need someone there who can potentially stop this from happening. The Grey Ajah is the Ajah that keeps the political climate of the Wheel of Time stable. This is important for all of the other Ajahs that come before this one to actually be able to fulfill their purpose. The Wheel of Time is essentially a feudal system. It's a system that's very volatile and is a system in which wars may often take place. The Greys as an Ajah step in to prevent that from happening. They keep relations good between the nations and they stop us from going to war. That to me is one of the best goods that an Ajah could serve, or that anyone could serve. Like I said when I was putting the Green Ajah solo down, we don't want to go to battle with people, we want to avoid that. And it's through the Grey Ajah that we can do this. In terms of day-to-day good, the Grey Ajah sits on top. They're what keeps the cities of the Wheel of Time together, and also they keep the White Tower together. I also think this is fundamentally a force for good rather than evil, because again, if the countries are working together, if the Ajahs are working together, then overall things are going to be better for everyone involved in the White Tower and people involved in the wider world. Okay, on to number 1, and if you've been paying attention then you should already know what number 1 is. The Yellow Ajah. The Yellow Ajah primarily studies healing. Yellow sisters are known for being passionate and self-assured, and it is often noted that they take great care of their appearance and have been described as flamboyant. The Yellows are pretty much like the Greys in that without them, society would collapse. The Yellows are committed to healing people, to making sure people stay alive, to discovering cures for serious illnesses. You really can't underrate the importance of that cause. If the Green Ajah have all fallen victim to some serious illness, they're not going to be ready to fight in the last battle. The same for the Reds, they can't hunt male channelers if they're sick, the Blues can't fight their causes if they're sick, the Greys can't mediate if they're sick, and the Whites can't philosophize if they're sick. The Yellow Ajah probably do more for good than any member of any other Ajah. It is the Yellows, or at least the combined work of the Yellow Aes Sedai Nynaeve with Rand, who cure the taint from Sire Din. This, outside of killing the Dark One, is one of the biggest contributions to the light that you could possibly make. Not only is it cleansing the Dark One from an aspect of the magic system, which is incredibly important, it also stops future generations of male channelers being hunted down and killed by the Red Ajah. People do sometimes mention that the Yellow Ajah tend to be arrogant, but I think that of all the Ajah, the Yellows have the most entitlement to be arrogant. Because as I say, without the Yellow Ajah, without people committed to healing, none of the other Ajahs can even function in their respective goals. I wasn't expecting the Yellow to come at the top, but on reflection I do think that it is the right choice for the best of the Ajahs, at least in terms of the criteria that I have given. Okay, that's it for today's video. I'd like to thank everyone that responded to the Twitter post I put up asking you what your favourite Ajah was. You guys inspired me to make this video, and I've also really enjoyed making this video. If you like what I do here, please like and subscribe for more content, and let me know what your ranking of the Ajahs would be in the comments below. I'm always open to new arguments, so if you think that you could argue that the Black Ajah is the best of the bunch, I'd really like to see that in the comments below. Take care everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.